Up next, to talk to you more about involvement in your community and what it means to all of us, is Vera Elwood. Vera has served as the Ward 2 City Council member for the City of Columbia since her August 2025 election. In her day job, she works as the Youth Program Coordinator at the Center Project, Mid-Missouri's LGBTQ Community Center, where she runs one of the state's oldest LGBTQ youth groups. It's a youth group she runs, not a library. She was previously a librarian for almost a decade and earned her Master of Library and Information Science in 2019. She's also served as a disability and accessibility consultant for libraries and companies across the nation. After serving as a foster parent for 3 years, she is now an adoptive mother to her wonderful son. Vera Elwood.
Hello, and thank you all so much for that incredible introduction. Now, I am the daughter of a preacher, and so there are a few things that come naturally to me, and one of those is a call and response. So we're going to do a little bit of that during this speech. And so we're going to do a little bit of practice. When you hear me say, when we stand together, you are going to respond, we win. When we stand together, when we stand together, we win. When we stand together, we win. Perfect. Now I'm here to talk today about what the Trump administration wants, because they are not hiding their intentions anymore. The Trump administration wants us to be overwhelmed. If reading the news the past few years has felt like drinking from a fire hose, that is intentional. In fact, there is a name for this tactic: flood the zone. From the publication of Project 2025 to Trump's first day in office for his second term, the plan has been clear: flood the zone. Work so quickly and throw out so many half-baked plans and executive orders that it's impossible to stop them all. Overwhelm us with horror after horror to wear us down, force us into an onslaught of information so that we cannot react quickly, make us numb, make us exhausted, make us complacent. But we will not be overwhelmed, because we know that when we stand together, we win. The Trump administration wants us to be hopeless. As a librarian, I know that when I need to find hope, I can look to history. And this city that I love and call home has so much hopeful history for us to draw on. Residents of Columbia have always joined the fight for justice. In the 1940s, young veterans arrived on Mizzou's campus with their GI Bills and realized that the benefits they received from the military weren't nearly enough. The government had no true investment in their physical or mental well-being after their service was over. And so student veterans here at Mizzou in Columbia became one of the first groups to hold a protest in the movement that eventually led to the VA hospital systems and veterans benefits as we know them now. In the 1960s, the local chapter of the Congress on Racial Equality joined chapters in 30 different locations and 7 different states around the nation in a protest for the desegregation of restaurants. The local core chapter held sit-in protests at restaurants here in Columbia, including Ernie's Diner and the Minute Inn, which has now become Broadway Diner. The national movement led to the integration of restaurants around the country. In 1970, 3,000 students protested in front of Jesse Hall to ask the university to take a stand against the Vietnam War, and 30 students and professors were arrested on the spot, leading to official censure of the university and its administration by the American Association of University Professors. Yeah. A year later, a remembrance march for the victims of the Kent State and Jackson State shootings led to McAllister Park being renamed Peace Park. There are so many more stories of protests here in Columbia that I could tell. Protests that led to local, statewide, and national change. Protests that led powerful people to step down. Protests that spread hope. The Trump administration wants us to believe that local movements are hopeless in the face of national threats. But we have proof. We in Columbia are proof that when we stand together, the Trump administration wants us divided. They want us to think that our fights are separate, that their violence is felt individually rather than systemically, that our battles should be fought in isolation. But we know that when we stand together, a loss for any of us is a loss for all of us. But more important to remember in these times is that a victory for any of us is a victory for all of us. And each victory has a snowball effect into other fights and other lives. In 2024, thanks to a movement led by students and citizens here in Columbia, the Columbia City Council passed an LGBTQ safe haven ordinance. In the face of horrific policies at the state level, this ordinance prevents the city from pursuing legal punishment or prosecution for gender-affirming care, drag performances, or restroom use based on gender. We became the first city in the state of Missouri to enact an ordinance of this kind. And since other municipalities have looked to us as example legislation. In another recent win, Columbia became home to the first unionized library in the state of Missouri when the Daniel Boone Regional Library Workers United won their election in 2022. It was fighting alongside the DBRL staff during their historic win that inspired me to help start the Mizzou Workers United campaign through LIUNA 955. In December, Mizzou librarians filed their petition to unionize, poising them to become the second unionized library in the state. Over this weekend, Mid-Continental Regional Public Library in Kansas City just announced their campaign to become the third unionized library in the state. Columbia is proof that when we stand together, the Trump administration wants us scared. In December 2025, ICE entered the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Using SWAT gear, armed with military-grade weapons, and covering their faces with masks, ICE agents began brutally and unconstitutionally arresting, detaining, harassing, and beating local citizens. Schools shut down, and charity food delivery services were started because people were scared to leave their homes. Renee Good and Alex Preddy were killed in the streets. People were right to be scared, but they didn't let being scared stop them. Thousands upon thousands of people filed into the streets in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and cities around the nation to protest ICE actions. safety networks were created overnight to hand out safety whistles, provide clothes, burner phones, and safe rides for people let out of detention facilities, gather personal information from protesters as they were being arrested so loved ones could be contacted, and more. The city stood up and gathered around their most vulnerable to say, when we stand together, and they did win. In February, ICE ended Operation Metro Surge. Now, it is important to remember that while ICE ended Operation Metro Surge, they did not fully withdraw from Minnesota. At last count, there were somewhere between 400 to 1,000 ICE agents still in the state of Minnesota. They have not given us an exact count. Even when we experience victory, the fight does not end. And Minnesota isn't the only place feeling pressure. In December, Trump announced plans to build more ICE detention facilities and mentioned Kansas City as an ideal location. In January, Kansas City's City Council proactively passed a 5-year ban on permits, licenses, and zoning approvals for any detention facility not owned or operated by the city. While this ordinance came from the mayor, it was largely inspired by public backlash after a local company allowed ICE to tour their warehouse as part of a potential sale. Community input has power because when we stand together, the Trump administration, more than anything, wants us to back down. When I announced my campaign almost a year ago, the first thing that came rolling in, long before the donations, was advice. Not always advice I asked for, but a lot of advice. And the first wave of advice was all the same. Don't be so progressive. Back down. I was told to hide my views and dress my platform up in conservative language so as not to scare away voters, and more importantly, donors. I told them my constituents aren't scared of progress. I was told my political statements and campaign platforms should be just one step to the left of Trump, no further. I told them one step to the left of a fascist is still a fascist. I was told I had no chance. And then, I did not hide my progressive values. And then, in a city that has seen conservative candidates outpace their opponents' spending election after election, I raised twice as much as my opponent. I did not give in to conservative language or conservative platforms. And then the predicted 8% voter turnout turned into 20%. Higher than Ward 2 has ever seen, even for presidential elections. I did not stand one step to the left of a fascist. And then I won by 14 points, the largest margin in Columbia City Council history. I did not back down. I stood true in who I am. And then I became proof that progressive values win. But my fight isn't a one-time example. We are seeing pushes at the national level for us to back down, for us to give in, for us to stand just one step to the left of a fascist. we as a group must say that we will not let that happen. Because when we stand together, the Trump administration wants us to believe we have no power. They want us to believe there's nothing we can do at the local level to combat their tyranny. But history tells us otherwise. Our community tells us otherwise. I tell you otherwise. Because when we stand together, we win! Thank you.